Okay, let's talk about ecology when it comes to AP Bio. First, let's talk about biomes. Biomes are basically mega niches, okay? They're defined by average temperature, annual precipitation, right? So, an example that would be temperate rainforest, desert, etc. And then your habitat is like a general area, so like a forest or like a specific like general area of land. That would be your habitat. So where an animal like might just like be walking around in that general area. A niche is where an animal is like most suited for where it is. So in the last video I said, the termites live best in the log or like around the log. That would be their niche. Their habitat would be the forest, and their biome would be the temperate rainforests of North America. That's how you would differentiate those three. A brief species like term you might want to know is keystone species, which is an organism that will destroy the food web if removed. So an example of this is otters who eat sea urchins, and these sea urchins eat kelp. So if the otters are removed, the sea urchins will eat all the kelp, completely destroy the environment, in fact, killing themselves because now they have no food and basically just screwing everyone over. Now let's talk about the pyramid of like energy. You have like four tiers basically. You have producers, also known as autotrophs, and these are plants. Okay, this is anything that does photosynthesis because it makes its own food. Okay, like like myself as an autobiography, stuff like that. So the sun gives all its energy to these producers, and it is eaten by primary consumers. So if I had to say anything, that would be maybe like a caterpillar, for example. A caterpillar, it's your herbivores, your cows, stuff like that. Another word for this is heterotrophs, okay? They can't make their own food, so they have to eat something else to get that food. That's a heterotroph. It's getting 1/10 of the energy that the producers got. So it's harder for these species to survive like on mass scale in comparison to the producers. Now, what's even harder is for the secondary consumers. So the secondary consumers, they'll take a bite out of the producers as well as the secondary consumers, okay? That is your omnivores. So, thinking of a herbivore. Okay, humans. Humans, way back when, were herbivores or omnivores. They would eat both plants and animals. And they'd be getting 1/10 of the energy from the plants when they were eating plants, but they were getting 1/10 of the food that was coming from the herbivores, which was already 1/10 of the food that was coming from the producers. So they're getting 1/100th of the energy when it came to them eating like a rabbit instead of some berries. Now carnivores, it's the same thing, okay? They just eat living things. Those are your tertiary consumers. These are your like apex predators. So this is like hawk, wolf, right? Strictly carnivore diet, just eat other people, other animals, no plants. Okay, this is your liver king. Now it is getting barely any energy, to be honest. It's getting 1/10 of the energy that's coming from secondary consumers, which is already pretty low, right? That's like 1/100th, so 1/1000th of that energy that originally came from the plants. And it's getting 1/100th of the original energy that's coming from the primary consumers. And what this means is that primary consumers are actually relatively rare, right? To put that in perspective, you are more likely to find a rabbit, a cow, other such things, Let me think of something that isn't a cow that you'd find in the forest. Like a deer. Yeah, like those kind of animals, elk, moose. You're more likely to find them because they can just eat grass and grass all day because it's everywhere and it gives them so much energy. Um, but your hawks, your wolves, all this stuff, they're relatively infrequent in comparison to these deers because they have to eat like a whole deer for each meal, basically, right? Meanwhile, the deer can just look down and get its food for the whole week. Decomposers, they're the lucky ones. They can eat tertiary consumers, secondary consumers, primary consumers, and producers as long as they're already dead and preferably dead near them. Okay. These decomposers, it would be fair to say they're kind of screwed if their main food source fully decomposes. Right. And this whole idea of energy, the best way to think about it is that every time you go up a level, you're decreasing by 10 times, like when it comes to how much energy you're getting. And this is because of like all these metabolic reactions, reproduction, gas exchange, movement, growth, healing, maintaining homeostasis, like even just like expelling body heat. Like that's a waste of energy, okay? You're not, the animals aren't going to be able to get that back. Nope. Hold on. Spoiler alert. Let's talk about populations. So usually animals will follow either this or this kind of growth curve. K is the carrying capacity, which means that it is the max population size that can exist without destroying the habitat, which is like determined by like limiting factors. So we'll get back to limiting factors in a second, but the idea is, once a population gets like too big, it cannot go any bigger. So let's think wolves. If there's too many wolves, they will eat all the deer, and then these wolves will start to starve. Okay, and that brings down the population. And now there's more deer, and now they go back up. So it kind of starts going through this S curve right here, which I wrote exponential growth. This is supposed to be logistic growth. Let me change that live. Logistic growth, okay? This is described as the S curve, okay? It is plateauing around K. So it goes up. There might be some variability where it goes up, then down, then up. But it's going to be like relatively stagnant right here. Now the J curve is this animal that just blows past this like carrying capacity, and that might, destroy its whole habitat. Might even destroy itself, right? So imagine the deer just kept on, or the wolves just kept on eating the deer and ate all of them, and now there's no deer, and now they all starve. That's what a J curve exponential growth would look like, right? And let's talk about the limiting factors. So there's two kind of limiting factors. There's density independent and density dependent. So density independent is when like population size doesn't matter. So that's for your natural disasters, humans, temperature, climate change, sunlight, physical characteristics, behavior, predators, all that kind of stuff. Meanwhile, density dependent is based off population size, right? Complete opposite. So this is like competition with each other, right? In that wolf scenario, when they're fighting for food, that's a density dependent. Disease, maybe all these wolves are clumped together and one gets sick and now all the rest of them are sick. Predation, that would be like with the deer. Okay, when the deer population goes up, so does the wolf one. When the deer one goes down, so does the wolf one. It's like push and pull factor. Parasitism, right? Parasites, they love when there's more animals because that just means that there's more food that they can latch onto. Crowding, too many wolves in one place, they just die. And stress, basically same thing. Now, there is like three kind of like population lifespan curves. We're not going to really talk about ones that are like unaffected. This is basically just like, oh, it is what it is. Slowly, you're more and more rare to like live as long because you'll just be hunted by a predator. But most of them either fall into a K-selected population or an R-selected population. So a K-selected population, a lot of them, make it to early life, and it's only once they get to like 50, 60, 80, that's when they start dying off. And this is because humans put a lot of energy into making offspring, and they have way fewer of them than the R-selected population. In your R-selected population, that's like your rats, your spiders, these things that just like pop out. They just pop out babies. There's just like lots and lots of babies. And it just like doesn't end. And most of them will die, around right after they're born. And yeah. Also, I don't know if you saw any of this, but this is a good time to read while I tried my best to explain this. So this is the rate of, this is like the growth rate of an animal. And it is the change in population over the change in time. That's going to be like your max growth rate. It's not going to get much higher than that. And okay, I found out what it is. So you actually have two equations, dn over dt for logistic curves and for exponential curves. So let's talk about the J curve first. So it is your max reproductive abilities times your population. That's just going to get you your value. So as time goes on, it's just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger until it undoubtedly crashes because you killed the environment. However, for S curves, it is going to be your max reproduction rate times the carrying capacity minus your population over the carrying capacity again times the population again, right? So it's probably way easier just to memorize this whole thing instead of getting all into it. And while we're on the subject, let's talk about one more thing, which is the Simpson's Biodiversity Index, which is D is equal to 1 minus the sum of little n times little n minus 1 over big N, parenthesis, big N minus 1. So what is big N and what is little n? Little n is basically just number of specific species. So let's go all the way back to our log example from way back when. We would count the number of species of termites living in the log, number of woodpeckers eating from the log, number of moss plants growing near the log, number of mushrooms, etc. And big N is the just number, like total number of things living. Total number of things living. So while this is the number of specific, like, animal, right, or just organism, if anything, this is just the total. So you only have to do this part once, while this part right here, you have to do it over and over and over again. It's relatively easy, and I believe it is on your reference sheet, so don't get too scared when you see a question like this. Okay, let's now talk about the immune system. The immune system is our defense against pathogens, which are disease-causing agents, specifically antigens, which are something that elicit an immune response. So there's two kinds of defense systems that we have. We have non-specific and specific. So the non-specific defense style is not specific to a certain pathogen, which is pretty obvious. It's basically an equal opportunity defender, which I think a good way to think about it is the boogers you have in your nose and those nose hairs and everything else in there is to stop any bacteria from getting into your lungs, right? It is stopping it before it gets there, only allowing like air and like nitrogen, oxygen, that stuff to get through, while stopping all the harmful things like bacteria, fungus from getting into your lungs. Right? It's more of like a multi-tool, okay? It can not only stop bacteria from attacking you, it can stop viruses, it can also stop fungi, like all these things. This is the whole idea of a non-specific defense style. It's like the walls in Attack on Titan, right? They're supposed to block these small little things from getting in. Now, specific response is a defense style where you have something that's specifically tailored or directed at a specific pathogen. So these are like mini assassins with their own certain specialties who will like only attack certain groups. And there's two types of specific responses. So there's humoral, which primarily refers to antibodies circulating in body fluids, and it utilizes the B cells to make these antibodies. So the B cells basically make a bunch of landmines at the landmine factory and set them out across the blood. And if a specific kind of virus lands on top of this, it's done so. It's gone, right? But some specific pathogens that are specialized, that like not this one right here, they won't be affected. They can just stand on the landmine and be okay. And then you have cell-mediated responses, which is like, okay, a bounty poster gets sent out, and these guys come running in to go kill this thing. So that relies on certain cells to direct a response, right? It utilizes T cells, which only respond to antigens on their own body cells. And T cells bind to affected cells to inject perforin to make them explode. Now, what does it mean by that? If a cell is getting infected by an antigen, it can make parts of the antigen stick out and basically say, help, I'm being attacked, and they can be killed by your antibodies, which look like this, your T cells, or your helper T cells. And your helper T cells are like an extra, like even louder alarm system saying, hey, better come quick, better come quick. And it binds to the part of the antigen sticking out, which is called an epitope. And it stimulates the creation of cytotoxic T cells, which are the ones that make it explode. And after an infection, these B and T cells can differentiate into memory B or T cells. And this makes these cells remember a specific antigen, right? So these are your war veterans, okay? And if they ever see the Vietnamese, or how they would say, the viruses of a specific, brand come back, they're going to be like, okay, ringing the alarm bells, we need you, and you. And that will just like create like immediate, like a much faster response if you were to get sick again, right? If you've gone through cold season and got sick once, and you would get sick a second time, the time it takes you to be cured that second time is much faster than the first time, because your body remembers what the common cold looks like. But come next year, it kicks your butt again. Why? The reason why is because these memory B or T cells cannot last forever, okay? Eventually they will die, and there's nothing you can do about it. But some like techniques stay in your life forever. Like I think it might be chicken pox. If you get chicken pox when you're young, it stops you from getting smallpox when you're way older. That was a thing way back when, I think. I don't think you have to worry about smallpox anymore, to be honest. And this is called adaptive immunity. And this is, gained when you have these cells, because you'll have a stronger and faster immune response. Okay, that, again, is now everything for AP Ecology. I have some great news. I am making a full review of AP Bio coming soon. Just grabbing the notes. This is my final notebook, in which I have written every note for every final that I have ever taken since sophomore year, right? Even here, I have some flashcards that I was given. This is for stats, and this specifically is for AP Bio. So in AP Bio, we are going to be talking about basic chemistry, chemistry of life, macromolecules. This looks like photosynthesis to me. That's cellular respiration, mitosis, CRISPR, restriction enzymes. All this stuff we will be going over soon, so stay tuned for that. Subscribe, comment. There's this thing on mobile, if you are watching this there, where you can hype the video. And if you've watched it this far, I'd really like you to hype this so you can get it out to more people. You'd be doing all these other people who are studying for AP Bio a huge favor. Okay, I will see you very soon. Good luck on your tests.